government official blaming a mysterious snake for missing funds of about $100,000.
It wasn't the first time a wild animal made headlines in Nigeria. But in 2018, the nation collectively paused when a government clerk claimed that a snake had sneaked into an office vault and swallowed 36 million naira in cash. Not long after, a different case surfaced. A monkey allegedly escaped with 70 million naira meant for lawmakers. Social media exploded with jokes and memes. For a moment, the absurdity was funny, until you realized what it really meant. Corruption in Nigeria had become so casual, so embedded, so untouchable that wild animals made better scapegoats than politicians. And this wasn't an outlier, it was a symptom. While snakes and monkeys took the fall, Nigeria's elite were flying private to London for checkups, building million-dollar mansions in Banana Island, and throwing weddings in Dubai that cost more than public school budgets. Meanwhile, in the same country, hospitals had no electricity, students sat on broken floors to learn, salaries went unpaid for months, and inflation made eggs a luxury. In the giant of Africa, survival now feels like a full-time job. In today's Nigeria, the fastest-growing industry isn't tech or agriculture, it's kidnapping for ransom. From school children to highway travelers, no one is off-limits. Entire communities now crowdfund ransom payments like they're organizing weddings. Banditry has become a full-fledged enterprise, complete with negotiators, middlemen, and payment structure. But how did it come to this? How did a country rich in oil, culture, and brain power become a place where politicians live like kings, while the masses are crushed by poverty, bad roads, and blackouts? This is not just the story of corruption. This is the story of how corruption became the operating system in Nigeria, and why, for millions of Nigerians, life has become almost impossible. Nigeria and its region still feel the effects of a long, often painful history, especially the Atlantic slave trade, which deepened tribal divisions that continue today. The modern economy began to take shape in the 1950s during Nigeria's push for independence from Britain, a movement shared by many countries at the time. In 1956, during decolonization, Nigeria discovered large oil reserves enough to potentially become Africa's top producer. By the time independence was achieved in 1960, hopes were high that Nigeria could become one of the continent's richest nations. Many believed that shared economic opportunity might unite the country, and every sign of progress sparked renewed optimism. However, this hope was based on the false idea that Nigeria was a unified, cooperative nation. In reality, deep religious and cultural divisions persisted. The country was initially structured into 4 regions, but distrust between the North and South grew, each fearing the other's dominance. By 1966, these tensions erupted into violent conflict, and Nigeria was forced into a single federal system. This forced unity didn't hold up well, as there was little real cohesion. Colonialism left behind weak institutions, systems not designed to support stable economies, but rather easily taken over and used by authoritarian leaders for personal gain. In Nigeria, corruption among politicians and election fraud became common, while the country went through a civil war and 5 coups in under 40 years. The only steady progress was its growing dependence on oil, which made up 87% of exports and 77% of government revenue by the late 1980s. During these unstable times, many criminals took advantage of weak governance. Scams were widespread, like using telex to trick Europeans into paying up front for Nigerian oil that never arrived. Nigeria had just enough modern banking and communications to enable these scams, but poverty was so widespread that many saw fraud as the only way to support their families. While such scams are now global, Nigeria was once the center of this due to its unique mix of tech access and poverty, damaging its reputation. This mix of fraud, corruption, and mismanagement became a lasting issue. But what makes Nigeria's situation especially tragic is its rise and fall in recent decades. In the early 2000s, Nigeria's economy grew fast, about 7% GDP growth. Oil and gas still dominated exports, but only made up 14% of GDP. Agriculture was also growing steadily, involving about 70% of the workforce. On paper, Nigeria was becoming a manufacturing powerhouse. After major losses in the early 1990s, the sector rebounded from $9.64 billion to $55 billion by 2014. A key factor behind this growth was Nigeria's early and widespread access to the internet use, at least officially, for legitimate business purposes. The government began licensing telecom companies in 2001, and by 2003, thousands were already online. Today, that number is close to 100 million. This marked a major step forward, giving Nigerians access to research, government data, and global information tools that could help them make better decisions. If everything had gone smoothly, Nigeria could have become Africa's next economic superpower. With growing commercial agriculture, urban development, internet access, and oil production nearing 2 million barrels a day, the country seemed on its way to rivaling South Africa, not just as an oil-rich nation, but as a self-reliant one. However, this promise remains largely unfulfilled. Despite its advantages, Nigeria struggles with unstable and mismanaged institutions. And without strong institutions, resources and access to information don't guarantee progress. For comparison, Botswana, a landlocked country with fewer natural advantages, has managed to curb corruption and maintain stability, making its economy almost 5 times more productive than Nigeria's. Sadly, this explains why Nigeria's potential was never fully realized. In the wrong circumstances, even valuable resources can do more harm than good. Between 2014 and 2016, crude oil prices dropped by 44%, hitting Nigeria hard. This wouldn't have been a big issue if the country had developed strong industries outside of oil. The decline exposed how much Nigerian industries depended on oil. Agriculture, once seen as a rising sector, underperformed. Most farmers still lack access to modern tools like fertilizers and precision farming. The only real reason crop yields grew was due to population growth, which added more labor, but individual productivity remained very low. In fact, in countries like Nigeria, manufacturing can be more exploitative than productive. Regulations are weak, and many business owners and managers earn far more than average workers. During the final 3 years of economic growth, over 25% of Nigerians weren't earning low wages. They had no jobs at all and lived in deep poverty. Nigeria suffers from a significant amount of brain drain. Almost everyone wants to leave the country. In 2022, only 74,543 registered doctors were serving a population of over 220 million. More than 20,000 Nigerian doctors practice in the United States, UK, Canada, and Germany. In some poor countries, people can at least grow food to survive. But rapid urbanization in Nigeria meant many city dwellers had no land to farm. So, while Nigeria's GDP was growing, it didn't reflect in the average person's life. And once the headline numbers started falling, it became clear how bad things really were. Infrastructure like transit had improved, but it didn't fix the deep divide between the arid, poor north and the fertile, oil-rich south. Normally, people would move to more prosperous areas, but Nigeria's colonial borders ignored tribal regions. To make things worse, widespread poverty in northern Nigeria has made the region a key target for terror groups like Boko Haram. These groups have caused major destruction and further harmed an already struggling economy. Ongoing violence has forced many people to flee the area. Unemployment makes it harder to fight these groups, as many young men are either forced to join or do so willingly due to a lack of stable jobs. The violence is often too horrific to fully describe, and when combined with political corruption, it has driven away investment and economic opportunities. Nigeria has the potential to be Africa's financial hub and could benefit from investment, but that requires trust, something damaged by years of instability, corruption, and scams. With few other options, many people turn to fraud. Over decades, both public and private scams have grown, especially with the rise of internet cafes. Some people use them to send fake emails to foreigners, including oil investment lies or the infamous Nigerian prince scam. In 2005, a Dutch investigation firm estimated these scams cost victims about $3.2 billion, the same amount Nigeria received in legitimate foreign investment. These frauds are often called 419, but here's the twist. Over 70% of the scams blamed on Nigeria actually come from outside the country, yet Nigeria still gets most of the blame. Internet access in Nigeria was meant to help everyone connect for education and business. But in rural and less developed urban areas, poor connectivity has made things harder, creating a digital divide that worsens inequality, especially in youth literacy. Without clear goals, progress has been slow, and the economy's dependence on oil exports keeps it unstable. This cycle continues until today, even worse. Still, the Nigerian dream isn't lost. Since the 2014 crash, the economy has shown signs of recovery, and after 25 years of mostly democratic rule, Nigeria now has a real chance to improve if the focus shifts to helping the majority of people. Agriculture is a key sector with huge potential but faces serious threats. Climate change, poor pricing, and land disputes have caused conflict, especially as farmers deal with insecurity and insurgencies. While some issues are beyond Nigeria's control, things like irrigation, fertilizer use, and farmer training can be improved with better investment. Nigeria also has a strong trade position on the Atlantic and the potential to become a manufacturing hub. But with unstable wages, many people choose subsistence farming just to survive. If the government and investors can build trust and make these industries sustainable, the country has the population and workforce to thrive, as Nigeria has approximately 70% of over 220 million population below the age of 30. Most Nigerians want the same basic things: safety, stability, and a better future. That goal is still within reach if the right steps are taken. If Nigeria focused more on infrastructure, safe workplaces, and modern farming, even small improvements could make a big difference in reducing poverty. Nigeria can produce up to 2 million barrels of oil a day, but poor systems prevent it from benefiting fully. A major issue is mismanagement. Nigeria has one of the worst-run oil industries in the world. The government owns 4 outdated refineries that often can't operate due to missing parts or theft, making them dangerous and unreliable, and for Dangote Refinery is facing huge challenges securing sufficient crude oil supplies, impacting its operational capacity and ability to fully address the country's fuel needs. Efforts to get help from companies like Shell have mostly failed because corruption has scared off both national and foreign investors, not just in oil, but in agriculture, manufacturing, and internet services too. Violence and division persist, showing how damaging a bad reputation can be. People often talk about the oil curse or location, but without trust, none of it matters. Numbers may look good, but if farms are destroyed, education is weak, and infrastructure is unsafe, progress is meaningless, especially when these problems have lasted over 50 years. At the heart of Nigeria's story is a recurring pattern of promise and potential constantly at odds with dysfunction and disappointment. The country has never lacked in resources, talent, or ambition. What it has often lacked is cohesion, good leadership, and the systems to turn short-term gains into long-term progress. From colonial disruption to coups and corruption, from booming oil exports to widespread poverty, Nigeria's economic history has never been linear. Instead, it's been a cycle of hopes, raised and dashed, reforms attempted and abandoned, and moments of unity quickly followed by division. And yet, despite everything, Nigeria keeps moving. It keeps producing new ideas, new industries, and new generations that refuse to settle for the way things are. The story isn't over, and maybe that's what defines Nigeria more than anything else. A country that refuses to stop trying, even when the odds seem impossible.